This is Savannah Saunders from the Wonderful World of Dance, and today I'm thrilled to be speaking with dancer, choreographer, artistic director, and entrepreneur Mateo Klemmeyer. After a stellar career on stage, Mateo is now a hugely successful serial entrepreneur who owns 4 companies across manufacturing and the arts industries, turning over more than $15 million and employing a staggering 130 people. One of Mateo's companies is the beautiful dancewear company, Zarely. I'm absolutely in love with their clothing range, so I'm keen to hear more about it. So let's find out from Mateo how we went from dancing on stage to creating multi-million-dollar companies and building the most beautiful dancewear brand worn by famous ballerinas around the world. Hi, Mateo. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Savannah. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So before we talk business, let's talk ballet.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the beginning of your career. Tell us, when did you start dancing and what made you take up ballet?
Well, I started actually quite late. I always loved the arts, but I was doing mainly football and basketball, these kind of things. And then when I was about 13, in my hometown, Wuppertal, they were choosing children for the musical Oliver Twist. And so I went to the audition, and they threw me out immediately because they said my singing was so terrible. Fortunately, a little later, they still needed people, and then they took me back. They said, "Okay, you'll have a second try." And they liked my moving and my acting so much. They still hated my singing, but so they integrated me more and more to the point that at the end of the whole experience, they actually made me Oliver Twist, 4th cast, but still Oliver Twist of them in the musical. And then I don't know how you say that in English, when the voice breaks, when children go into puberty, boys. So the voice, so the others had the issues of that. I was a tiny child, so I didn't have the issue of my voice breaking, and so I actually became 1st cast. And so I fell in love with being on stage and acting and the whole experience. It was just the best. And then there was a ballet company involved in doing all the dance parts. And when I saw those guys, I was just in love with their movements. And it was like looking at people flying, and I wanted to find out how that feeling would be. So after that, I was really late to ballet. 14, 15, I actually started dancing. And I remember, so I was 14, 15, and I had to do my first classes with like 7-year-old girls coming, straight from the football pitch. I really had to overcome my own ego quite a lot there.
And
but that's how it came.
I was going to say, starting so late, like as you say, you had to overcome clearly some challenges. How did you manage to catch up with the rest of the class? How did you approach that?
Yeah, I generally, I think I'm a huge dreamer. And so when I have a dream, and I think even though everybody else around me said it's probably not going to happen for you, the whole dance thing, my dreams were so tangible in a way. I was sure I was going to make it. It was there. I had no doubt. And till today, I always run through life like that. And so I think it was just I had the work ethics that others didn't have, but simply because I was sure I was going to make it. It was more of a question of how fast it was going to be, and the more I would work every day, the faster I would get to the goal. And so when I just started, I did class every day, and still in the evening in my own room. I mean, my mom thought I was crazy. I would still do for 2-3 hours just stretching and trying things and so on every single day. And I think, you put in the efforts. I mean, you can even be as untalented as myself. You will still, get somewhere in the end.
I read that you were so determined to become a professional ballet dancer that you went to, as you say, some quite extraordinary intellectual lengths to improve your physical abilities, including studying the anatomy of fleas. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Tell us about this desire for knowledge.
Yeah. Well, it's the desire for knowledge is one thing, but it's more as I said at the beginning, I wanted to be able to fly. And I was actually an extremely bad jumper. I really couldn't jump very well. And so it was always just the means to an end. Whatever I do, whatever I learn, it was always that there seemed to be a roadblock on my way to get to my dream. And so I needed to build the knowledge to overcome this roadblock. And the jumping was a big one for me. And taking it from fleas, it helped me a lot. So I think I have a very different coordination to many other jumpers also, simply because I took it from fleas. I jump a lot. Like my takeoff is a lot slower. I'm doing it much more through pulling the muscle, almost like an arrow, and then shooting, rather than like trying to physically through muscle power get myself in the air. And yeah, that was one of the many things where I needed to find a way to that end, and that was I needed to research insects who are incredible jumpers.
And so you clearly achieved your dream. You danced across both sides of the Atlantic. You've danced with the San Francisco Ballet. You've danced with many other companies, Boston Ballet, Birmingham Royal Ballet, Zurich, rising through the ranks to soloist. Mm-hmm. Tell us about the experience of dancing with these companies, quite different companies.
Yeah. Well, I think there were very different experiences. Overall, I love the arts and I love dancing. I grew up in a very, very tolerant household, in a household where I was literally 5 years old and I would challenge my mom on anything. And she had to argue her case. It wasn't like, no, I tell you what to do and this is what it's going to be like. Going with this kind of mentality into ballet company is very, very difficult. And also constantly wanting to research. So I very often I would read about a role and I would challenge the choreographer, but it's not very common to be challenged as a choreographer or director, right? Yeah. So it was that part was very hard for me, but in the end, being on stage and just getting lost in this dream world on stage, to me there was no better. I really, really loved it. And I think I learned, the beauty to me, so every company was very, very different from one another, but I got so many different perspectives on dance that really enriched me a lot. And still to the day, so we're creating performances from time to time. We're going to have a gala coming up. It helps me obviously a lot to really take on all these different dance worlds that I have witnessed and try to put them together into a great arts piece.
And you just mentioned there about a gala. You also have your own dance company called M & Company. Tell us about this company of yours.
Yeah, well, I started it actually, a long time ago now, 11, 12 years ago. And what we would do, we would create pieces in San Francisco, for example. I lived for quite a while in San Francisco. In a warehouse, we would have small performances here and there, very often charity performances. And then we would take those and the best pieces that we created, and we would take those to Germany on tour, to Poland on tour. So that's what we did. I honestly did not do any. We did a dance movie also about the background of ballet dancers, or backgrounds of ballet dancers all over the world, coming from the slums in Rio or coming from, it's different. It's very different paths. But that was pretty much the last time I really still created a show, and that's almost like 5 years ago now. And now it's the first time that we're bringing something, but under Zarely, together with this big gala.
Well, as you mentioned Zarely, let's turn to Zarely, your uber stylish dancewear company. Mm-hmm. Where did the inspiration come to create Zarely?
Well, my two of my closest friends and me, we had long discussion in San Francisco. That was now 3 years ago, something like this. Ruben Martin, who is a principal with San Francisco Ballet, or was, now he's still a character principal dancer, and Diego Cruz, who's still with the company. And we had long discussions because we said, actually, so a lot of dancers start wearing Lululemon, for example, in rehearsal, or whatever is out there, besides the typical Nike and Adidas. But but we thought you can actually do so much better than that, so much more specific, like emphasizing the beauty of a dancer's leg or upper body or whatever, you would emphasize as a dancer if you would, make your own clothing. And so we started, that was the starting point, but we said, look, we don't really know about this and we want it to be extremely high quality. So that's when we then brought in fashion designers to support this endeavor. And so, yeah, that's how we came up with this. And now I would say pretty specific in targeting the people that we know best, which is fellow dancers.
And you work with quite a number of famous dancers to inspire the Zarely range. Tell us about why these collaborations are important to the design and quality of your products and to your overall, I guess, ethos of your company.
Mm-hmm. Well, we wanted to really understand the customer in the end and really cater to what they want. And I honestly feel like maybe Yumiko would be another one that really understands dancers because she has been a dancer, but most other companies are run by business people rather than dancers. And so our ultimate goal was to have as many dancers in as many roles as possible within the company, simply because they're the people that understand these dancers and their needs the best. And frankly speaking, a lot of these people, a lot of our role models, these principals from all over the world, and also ambassadors, people that we work with, are simply friends of ours. And when we talked to them, we said, look, we really want to do this thing. They were just super excited about it. And yeah, and that's how it came together. Really, a lot of big friends network almost, in a way.
And the range is really high tech, as well as being very, very beautiful. So just having a look at the range, but I think the particular range that was who was inspired by, let me think, Sonia Rodriguez.
Mm-hmm.
Some, really cool tops, which you can imagine actually you could wear into the studio, you could wear on the street. It's, very, very fashionable. And I'm just wondering sort of about what your vision is for the company going forward, because you've got quite a specific range at the moment. Are you thinking about other types of products that you'd like to introduce, or are you going to stick more with the sort of, the activewear, dancewear? What's the future look like?
Yeah, definitely activewear, dancewear. And we are going step by step, because if you look at what we're doing, we have been very much about ballet, to the point that people very often say, well, this is really great stuff, but it doesn't seem like you're communicating to me right now. I'm in yoga, for example. And so for us, we're now step by step trying to broaden, and we're going step by step, because we have been doing a huge mistake a half a year ago, where we said, okay, we are fairly established now in the ballet market. Let's move out and cater to mainstream people. And that was a big mistake, because we did such a big jump that suddenly our initial ballet audience didn't really understand what we were doing and whether they were still the people we communicated with. And the new people that we tried to get in as customers were people that said, well, you seem to be too specific for me. So suddenly we were like in the middle of nowhere. And we really had to pivot the company back to our initial starting point, which is really ballet. And now we learned we have to go step by step, now going out into maybe hip hop dance and jazz dance and other dance ranges, then Pilates, yoga, and gyrotonics, that is fairly close as a workout way to dancing. So really go much slower than we did. And yeah, I hope going forward we can also capture new markets, of course, like this. But I think our focus is really strengthening the dance market.
And with your background in managing companies, there must be quite a lot that you can take from the other companies that you run. Tell us a little bit about your sort of other businesses after you stepped off the stage and you had this great international career. You made or seems to be quite a dramatic career change.
Yeah.
You went and worked for a manufacturing company, is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I was gonna work for them, but then they went bust. So if I wanted to save my job, I probably would have to buy this thing. So and that's what I did. I bought them out, the people that were owning it, at literally €1, but I had to take on also the debt. And so that was my first experience. I actually came in. I was going to push their marketing activities, but frankly speaking, I also I wanted to do something of impact. That was very, very important to me. And so I was looking around there how I can do maximum of impact. And I had actually just failed because half a year before we had this whole initiative bringing a ballet company to Cologne. And we had gotten sponsors and secured funding. And then the city of Cologne decided to close the opera house. And so it all fell flat from there. And then the next opportunity, so I was basically nowhere then, was this marketing gig. And I wanted to keep, I had my other company still, the arts company, and we also started to do rave parties and stuff like this. But I wanted to do something of more significance, at least to me. And that's when this came along. I mean, it was basically a bust company, but when this came along, I thought, if I manage to turn this around, this will really boost my opportunities going forward. And so I did.
So you mentioned rave parties there. I'm going to have to stop here and ask you about that, because ballet dancer manufacturing dancewear rave company, doing not rave company, but putting on raves. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, we started putting on raves because, unfortunately, the arts usually don't really pay for themselves a whole lot. So we tried to find ways to make some money, basically. And that was one of the ways. So we had actually in San Francisco in the warehouse, we had several times that we would start out with a small performance, ballet, so that the community could come in, they could see what we were doing. We got some feedback for the pieces that we would create always for these tours. But then to get more people that were also a little bit outside of the usual arts genre, we had afterwards a big rave party because we had a big space there. And so, yeah, then people that came for the rave party watched the show and the other way around. That was actually quite fun. But it really, the initial starting point was, we need to make some cash.
So maybe there's going to be a record label in your future portfolio of companies to go with your dance companies.
Yeah. I hope not, because I mean, it is fairly stressful. The past years, not gonna lie, have been fairly stressful.
So tell us about that stress then. Tell us about how you manage these companies with your own dance company and, you know, building a new brand over the last couple of years. How do you manage those different elements of your life?
What is important is that you always do, at least for me, you always do one thing at a time. I learned it the hard way. At the beginning, I would have 2 or 3, let's say, ventures run in parallel. And that doesn't work. At least it doesn't work for me. So what I usually do, I set up a company, I start it up. I'm very involved usually in the starting phase. And then once it runs, I usually get people managing it at some point. So my company is now Polymimetics in UK, Polyoptics, which is in Germany. If I have the feeling they have a certain stability now, I bring in a new manager who's running the thing. And I just, once a month, I overlook the numbers, the key performance indicators, and so on and so on. And that's it. Otherwise, they run fairly independently. I only interfere if shit hits the fan, basically.
But your companies, they're quite different. You've got the manufacturing, and tell us about the other companies, because it doesn't seem like a normal natural fit. It seems so far removed from, you know, the dance world and, you know, the first act of your career. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, it was really so the had my own company with the performances. Then we started to do raves. Then I tried to set up this company in Cologne, which didn't work out. And then I got this opportunity with manufacturing. And so I went into it, and shortly after realized that it was a great opportunity as a starting point. But for me, what was, or not for me, generally making for myself the analysis, I was thinking that the outcome compared to the input that I'm giving, all my resources that I'm giving into this company, the ratio of this is off. So and I said I need to find something, or my next venture should be something where I can apply what I learned, but at the same time I would be strict about the market that I go into being really a growth market. And that's when I went after Polyoptics, which is in the LED market. And it was very specific. I wanted something that is in a growth market. And though the storylines of all these companies is fairly similar or the same, it's a company that's on the verge of bankruptcy. And you know, if you talk to your tax advisors, if you really are about your ecosystem, then those opportunities come by every once in a while, and then you can see what you can do with it. And so then this one came in, and back then the LED market was growing, but we needed cash, and because the company was on the verge of bankruptcy, nobody would give us the cash. So we struck a deal with this Polymerics. So I basically bought a company with debt that was given to us by the selling party, and we had a very clear idea how in the short run we could most likely generate cash from this company to help the whole structure in its entirety. And at the same time, in the long run, we would, because it's not a very futuristic product, we would need to find solutions, which we did in the end. But so it all ties in. I mean, I'm now blah blah blah, but it all ties in, and it all, like, it makes no sense whatsoever like this. But then when you go look into the details, it makes a lot of sense, actually.
A lot of commonalities. So
yeah.
So as an entrepreneur, do you feel that there are particular characteristics that have helped you succeed, or a particular sort of way in which you approach your business life that perhaps maybe has some commonalities with your dance life? As an entrepreneur, tell us about how you sort of approach your world.
I think so. The commonalities is persistence, is being able to deal, and this I actually unfortunately didn't have as a dancer as much as I would wish for. Being able to accept the discomfort that entrepreneurship brings, just as much as dancing. I mean, you're performing tonight. You're not for the whole day or even for the whole week before. If it's maybe, let's say, opening night, you're in a state of discomfort. And eventually just to accept this, you will be in a place of discomfort. So just try to switch it off and move on with your life. I mean, it won't get better by actually thinking about the task in front of you. So and then, persistence, just keep working, even though, every second day you feel like this is never going to happen. If you have an overall picture, and that picture shows you it will happen, then keep going, keep pushing through those bad days. And then I think what is very different to other entrepreneurs is the ability to read people and read people and their postures. I think that's something that's probably pretty different to most businessmen.
And I guess that would be from your partnering experience, being in the studio with other dancers and being so acutely aware of not only your own body, but of the bodies of your dancers around you, your dance teachers, your choreographers, ballet masters. So I can see how that would give you this unique perspective in being able to read people. How has perhaps some of the challenges that you faced in your business world been similar, or do you approach challenges in the same way between your dance world and your entrepreneur world?
Mm-hmm. I think especially the under pressure moments to stay focused. And so I as a dancer, when I started my career, and I think that's generally a problem of somebody who's very ambitious. I would be extremely nervous going on stage. And I actually learned a lot from the Cuban guys in particular. I have still a lot of Cuban friends. They would be joking around backstage and so on and so on. And I would be just madly concentrated. I think, and the drawback is that yeah, you're not relaxed enough to be present and in the moment. And so what helped me a lot was to really understand, to get into the moment and into this feeling of flow. So I don't have to control anything, and I don't have to go through steps 1,000 times just before the performance. It's not going to make a difference, but it will make a big difference if I'm just here and now in the moment, and I can react to whatever happens. And that's something I think that I learned very much from dancing, and that I can apply now in business meetings, in these kind of environments, that when it's go time, it's a lot of pressure, I can stay in the moment because I know how to get to that place. And yeah, I think that's a big one.
You're clearly still quite young and you've already achieved so much. What are your other goals or other sort of ambitions that you talked about before that you are still working towards, either sort of, you know, business wise, or in your personal life, or the things that you do perhaps outside to, you know, relax a little bit? Or what are your goals? What are your dreams you're still looking to pursue?
My main goal is, so I would initially say, to create as much impact as I can. Create a bigger company, a better company, but really I think my main goal is to find peace in myself, because I think I'm constantly driven, I'm constantly striving for the next thing, and really, I mean, ultimately you have to ask yourself why. You know, what is that really going to make a difference in your life? You're still going to have ups and downs. Are they really going to be that different? And so I think yeah, a big one is I have to find the balance in my life and the peace, not to constantly chase after, you know, run in the hamster's wheel in a way.
You're quite athletic still outside of work and dance, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love working out. Uh-huh.
So you mentioned the Ballet Gala that you're doing with the Zarely brand. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So yeah, the Zarely Gala, I can't even say the name Zarely anymore. I say it so often. Zarely Gala is one of our many projects, and what we want to do, so we want to bring some of the best ballet dancers in the world to Ukraine to have them perform, and we want to stream it into the world so everybody can watch it live, as well as stream it in big. We have some partners here that we want to do this with. On a big screen in Kiev, so that the main audience, or let's say the let's say non-theater goers, can actually watch this performance as well. And I think it makes quite a difference. I think this has been done in Cuba also half a year ago or something like this. To the people here, that makes a big difference, because to buy a ticket for many people here in Ukraine is a big deal. So because it's quite expensive. So yeah, this is what's coming up. That's what's coming up next, and hopefully it will all work out to the extent that we want.
And why did you choose the Ukraine? That's an interesting location.
Yeah, well, we have in the past I had a business, or let's say a venture here in Ukraine, and so that was like my first step to working with Ukrainians. And a big one really is the fact that Ukrainians, for startups, the Ukrainian mentality is almost perfect. And so we have quite a lot of people work with Zarely here in Ukraine. And why it's perfect is I have German companies, and I don't want to bash my employees in Germany. Of course not, they're fantastic. But generally this spirit of I'll make it happen is a lot more here. People are a lot more entrepreneurial than in many other countries that I've witnessed, or actually all of them. So if somebody is not exactly, or let's say it this way, I make an example. Actually, she's sitting in front of me right now, by the way. Our lead designer, we're not happy with layouts for catalogs and so on. And she says, you know what, I'll do it. And then you have a designer, a fashion designer, suddenly creating a catalog, which, you know, I think in my experience in the past, most people would be like, well, that's not my job. Find the person that's right for it. And this is a mentality that's wonderful to work with, especially for a startup.
Absolutely. To be able to have a team around you that is willing to, you know, roll up their sleeves and get involved, you know, to make sure that the outcome is delivered. I mean, it sounds like a perfect synergy between yourself, your company, and the, you know, Ukrainian people.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's really about all the questions that I had for you today. I just wanted to ask a couple of final questions. And one is, it's a question I like to ask a lot, is what advice would you give to other dancers who are perhaps thinking about stepping off the stage and entering into the next phase of their lives, either as an entrepreneur or as in traditional employment? What advice would you give others?
Well, get in contact with Zarely.
Brilliant.
Is the first one for sure. I think to me that's a hard one. To say generally speaking, you know, do what you want to do and don't do what you think is the only way. I have friends that became ballet teachers because they felt I can't choreograph, and I'm not renowned enough to be a director. You know, become a teacher because you really want to become a teacher. But if you actually want to become a computer scientist, you know, don't get stuck in the ballet world. You know, move out and do whatever you can do next, and go that path. I think it's very, very possible. I think the first steps are very hard, but it's easily possible, because as a dancer you have had a whole career already, and you're only 30 something years old, and you had to cope with so many challenges. You know, the next challenges will most likely be only a lot easier than that. So yeah, don't limit yourself, for sure.
That's such fantastic advice. I just want to thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
For our wonderful listeners and our lovely viewers, you must check out Zarely's incredibly beautiful dancewear, and especially their collaborations with famous ballerinas and dancers, which are just, as I say, stunning. Visit zarely.co and definitely check out their gorgeous social channels, especially their Instagram, which I'm a bit in love with. You can also learn more about Mateo's dance company, mandcompany.com. And finally, again, thank you so much for joining us, Mateo.
Thank you for having me, Savannah. Thank you.
Thanks.